Call to order this meeting of the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee. It's our meeting number 28 of fiscal 22. Tonight is Monday, March 7th at 7 p.m. It's a fully remote meeting and therefore must read the following. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, no in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted for entirely remote meetings, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means on Westborough TV, Verizon Channel 28, or Charter Channel 192, or on www.youtube.com/Westborough TV. However, in the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, you just make sure nobody's trying to get in. Good. So we're going to bypass the meeting minutes till later and let our guests, we'll go through all our guest actions first. And first, we're glad to have Ernie. I don't want to mispronounce your name. Is it Hooley? Howley? Who? How? How do you do that?
Pool, just like school or pool or pool.
Oh, cool. Okay, Ernie Hoole, Superintendent from Assabet Valley Regional, and Maria Silva, who's the Director of Business Operations, also joining us. So why don't you guys start your presentation?
Sorry about that. I'm just trying to make sure I get the right screen to come up here. So let me share my slide, which is not my, so this is our presentation of the fiscal year 2023 final budget. As always, we'd like to thank the Finance Board for meeting with us on this annual presentation. I believe there are some new members of the Finance Board, so what we generally do is we'll go through our presentations. If you have questions throughout, feel free to just stop us. If not, we'll answer them at the end. And also just to thank you to the town administration and the community of Westborough for their continued support. And that includes my colleague from Westborough Public Schools, Superintendent Bach, for all of their assistance and support of Assabet throughout the years. So just gonna switch to a quick little slide for FY21 and FY22 fast facts as we get into the budget for FY23. Just a little bit of a recap from FY21. Assabet was fortunate enough, after having a renovation project in which all of our 7-member towns had approved, to have an updated ventilation HVAC system. We actually have a hospital grade system in the school district. And then with the large spacing within our school district and our class sizes and career and technical program spaces, we were able to prioritize our learning to have 100% in-person learning for CTE. All of our staff was in the building during that year of 2020 to 2021. And in May of that year, like many school districts, we all came back full time. During the time in which they were out, we had just one period in which we had a couple of weeks that we extended in remote, and that was over the December holiday break, and that all kids were remote. But as you probably all well know, it's very difficult to do career and technical education in a remote format. And that although we have robotic welders and such, it's, to do the hands-on experiential component, we need to be in person. For our academics, we had our students pulled out of their career tech program for one period a day for each of those days in which they were in. So they did have some face time with their academic teachers, but the 80% of that was done at school, at home rather. We were able to handle the challenges of COVID, as I mentioned, with the health and safety, the spacing, some of the protocols we put into place. We were very fortunate that we were able to come up with a plan that basically was within the realm of the teacher contract. So we had literally a single page, not even full page MOA that just talked about some specifics of remote learning. And then, as I mentioned, are prioritizing the learning of being in person for those technical areas. Last year, for that year, Westborough had 4 graduates. And you'll see that in the another slide, 2 went directly into 4-year college and 2 went directly into the workforce. So just quickly for FY22, some of the things, and we'll talk about some of the drivers of the budget, but these are just some quick things. So if I just share with you, this is the current student profile for students from Westborough. So we have a total of 45 high school, which are grade 9 through 12 students. And then we have an additional 4 post-secondary students. And all the numbers you see here, and in the assessment type numbers, you'll see, it will say 49 students for Westborough, and that's because of the 4 additional post-secondary students. You will see that these numbers are all based on the high school population. So out of the 45, we have 21 students that are receiving special education services. And then here are the shop selections of where the current students are placed here at Assabet. Down below, you'll see here's the postgraduate plans for the class of 2021. We already talked about, and then the overall, we had 264 students graduate last year. And then you can see all the other information that's there. And I'll push this stuff out to you so you have it. But I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Again, just some quick, here's the total enrollment of the district. And then you can see our numbers generally will fluctuate for special education enrollment anywhere between 25 and 32%. 32% has been the highest since I've been here at Assabet, which I started with the district in 2015. And then you can see it's about a 47% of students with special education. So we've seen our percentage of special education students requiring services go down. However, like many of the school districts, what we're seeing is the level of services have increased. And that also includes some of the social and emotional and mental health type of services. Any questions so far? If not,
I have one quick question. What you call postgraduate, are those students who are remaining in school in the sort of 18 to 22-year-old slot?
No, those are all students that have graduated. Okay. And so if they've graduated and have a high school diploma, that would be anything that's postgraduate or post-secondary. So the programs that we offer, because we have, at one point in time, Assabet used to allow for postgraduates. So those would be adults working working or learning side by side in the daytime type programs with the high school students. You know, the adults were quarried and all that type of stuff, but they would be in the daytime programs working side by side in, say, culinary or carpentry, if there was available spots. However, over the past at least 7 years since I've been here, that number of postgraduates has declined greatly, but we have post-secondary practical nursing students, which is a completely separate program, operates during the day, but it is in the school. There's usually about 50 to 55 students that we enroll for that program. And then we also have a nighttime cosmetology program, which has been post-secondary approved through the Department of Ed. And we have an advanced manufacturing program that's post-secondary approved as well. So those are our additional adult type opportunities that folks can access from our 7-member towns. And I'll talk a little bit more about from the, besides just offering the high school component, what we're doing as well for workforce development in the region through the governor's CTI initiative. So quickly, so here are our topics, and we're not going to read through every single slide, but you can kind of see some of the generic and standard type things that you would see. I'm going to cover the first 6 or 7 up until enrollment, and then we're going to turn it over to Maria, and then I'll just kind of dive in when needed. But our FY23 budget overview, we have an operating budget of $24,108,684. The $1,004,684 increase, which is about a 4.3% over the previous year. If you remember also for last year, because the whole budgeting process was kind of screwed up. There was a reduction to our overall budget that ended up being reflected. And we also utilized ESSER 2 money, in which Westborough did utilize, not a lot of money, but that's an additional piece that has bumped up what the minimum local contribution will be, and we'll talk about that as we move through. The capital budget, what I'll say is with Maria, and Maria Silva, we didn't introduce her, but she joins us. She started with us in September. She's from Greater Lawrence Tech. And there might be some slight lingo that's a little bit different in reference to certain things. One of them, we always used to come and we'd say, this is the debt assessment based on the renovation project that occurred. Maria has always put it in as capital budget. So we'll do some clarifying on Maria's new way of how she presents the budget so that our member towns, we've been doing that in each of our finance meetings. So this capital budget is the renovation project that was approved. We're in the 7th debt service payment for FY23. And this $55,000 decrease is actually shared amongst all 7 member communities. And we have a slide that will show that. Our budget drivers for this year's budget, obviously, as we have increasing numbers of, or large numbers of students with special education service needs, and then our ELL numbers, we were at about 3% before, we jumped up to 5%. And then the students with disabilities, you know, we've seen large impacts of students with autism. You know, we might have had 5 in the district at one point, and we're now up to 25. So we've seen those things kind of increase exponentially. We do not have a separate special education cost that we assess to the towns. So we generally, when we see the students that come in, unless there's a collaboration between districts in which we're at potentially transition meetings for students going from 8th grade to 9th grade, a lot of the types of services that are needed are not known until the student's actually at our doorstep. Assabet is not eligible to, we're not eligible to receive circuit breaker money because we're a regional vocational school district. So we are not, we do not have ability to access those funds. We have, obviously, with the large numbers of the student population with services that are needed, we do not have breakout type classes. We have co-taught classes. They're all inclusion. So we do not have resource rooms. So we have a lot of co-taught classes, either with 2 teachers or with paras and a teacher. So we try to maintain those appropriate class sizes and ratios to create the best learning environment. Obviously, you'll see in this budget as well, we've added a tech specialist that will be on the technical side of the house that will help primarily special education students, but also all students if they have some issues with learning when they're in the CTE side of the house. Our special ed teachers, special education teachers, are generally more focused in the academic side of the house, but we do see needs on the technical side as well. We've got, you know, increase of enrollment, so keeping a diverse program of studies is something that's important to us. And then the extracurricular activities, when folks learn about regional voc, if they're new to the district, you're not familiar with Assabet, a lot of times you'd be surprised. Some folks say, is it cost? You know, is there a cost to attend Assabet? They don't realize we're a public school, and they don't actually understand that we offer all the same type of activities that a high school would, except for we have the technical shops, and there's a change in our scheduling component. And then lastly, the budget driver is, this budget meets all of our contractual obligations and kind of moves us closer to a pre-COVID staffing and services level. We had 21 positions that we did not backfill the year that COVID hit. And with that, some of those were retirements or resignations. We did have 7 reductions and 7 people that had a reduction in force. We had not brought back yet. So you'll see that there's some staff members that we're looking to include back into this budget. What I will say, we're on the 3rd year of a transportation contract, which has a maximum of a 2.5% increase for next year. Luckily, I don't believe we have anything in there that talks about, you know, cost sharing fuel prices. So, you know, at this point in time, that's a good thing for us. I would say that we are switching with our healthcare providers. As you may have heard, that Fallon's getting out of the commercial healthcare industry. And because of that, we've needed to change healthcare providers. Luckily with that, you'll see that our health insurance costs are actually decreasing from the years past and from last year specifically, where we're going with Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, which our folks will move on July 1st, 2022. And our split, just so the committee knows, it's a 75-25 split between the district and our employees. And that's for all employees that were hired prior to July 1st, 2019. Any individuals hired after that July 1, 2019, it's a 70-30 split. And that's something that we implemented a few years back. The last piece on the contractual obligations, we're in the final stage of negotiations with our Unit A and Unit B of the American Federation of Teachers. We do not have final numbers on that, but we do have any increases to their bargaining units included in this budget. Any questions? All right, so staffing adjustments since the pandemic hit, we have been without a librarian. So we're looking to add one librarian. We're looking to add the tech specialist, which I mentioned. We had 4 physical education instructors. We had gone down to 1, and we're looking to bring 1 back. We are looking to have a full-time building substitute. As my colleague from Westborough knows, it's very difficult to find subs. Not that 1 is going to make a huge difference, but knowing that I have 1 that comes every day will give a little bit of a peace of mind for our principal and administrative team. We have 1 paraprofessional, as I mentioned. We have paraprofessionals that are basically in some of the code talk classes, if they can provide assistance, and then they also help out with some learning with after school type help and those types of things. Staffing changes, we do have 1 FTE grant funded position that will move back into the operational budget. Assabet and most school districts seek a lot of grant funding, but as always, you can't have that grant funded position stay in grant funding forever. You need to eventually move them off and have them be worked into the operational budget. So that is a grant funded position that will be moving. And then the last slide for me, and then we'll turn it over to Maria. You can see here that for our enrollment for Westborough, you're going up 4 individuals from what you had last year. So that's so last year you had 45 for the October 1 numbers for 2020, and now they're going up an additional 4 students. One of the things that I actually jumped off my first slide for, and I'll probably just go back to it real quick, but I'll bring your attention to the bottom 3 or 4 lines of this enrollment sheet, and you can see that for the past several years, I've spoke to the finance committees in our member towns, and I've spoken about the amount of in-district applications that we've been receiving at Assabet and the increased interest. So you can see here, as we look at Boylston, we look at Clinton, Shrewsbury, and then other is basically a makeup of another 10 or so out-of-district towns. Their numbers have been decreasing because we've seen our in-district applications increasing. So what does that mean, and how does that affect basically our members? So over the past 5 years, we've seen our numbers and applications increase. So for an example, when I started, we had about 175, maybe 179 applications of in-district students from our 7 member towns. And we would get about 100, 110, or 115 from our out-of-district towns. At that time, we were only accepting 275 students. The next year, when we changed on a few things on how we promoted what Assabet does, we saw our in-district applications increase, and therefore we bumped to 285, and then we went to a 300 student enrollment. So if I can just switch slides just for 1 second. I'm looking at this 21-22 school year right here at the bottom. So for FY22, what kind of happened was you had the 5 years of running of the in-district applications increasing, but then the Department of Ed asked for policy changes in the Chapter 74 regulations, which are 603 CMR 4.0, and basically to have a more focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion when it came to the admissions process for all students looking to seek vocational education. So in doing so, they basically wanted to make sure that any potential barriers or obstacles would not affect disproportionate students who at times before may have not applied for whatever reason. Those reasons may be grades, they may be due to attendance, and they may be due to certain discipline type situations that happened, which I can explain. So for Assabet, what we did, we decided to do, the admissions policies used to be approved by the Department of Ed. They pushed the approval process and ownership back to every school district. So what the Assabet Valley School Committee did was they voted a minimum criteria lottery that took effect this year, in which it removed any kind of admissions criteria that included grading, attendance. It basically requires a student to submit an application. It requires them to submit a letter of recommendation from not just a guidance counselor, it could be a coach, it could be a pastor, a priest, an employer, family friend, a teacher.
Ernie,
Yep.
Ernie, I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I think we're getting a little bit in the weeds here for our interest.
Okay.
And we do have somewhat of a very busy night. So
Sure, okay.
that level of detail,
No
again,
problem.
you have to admit everybody. So if we can keep it going,
fine.
that'd be good.
So what I'd say is, in a nutshell, why that's important is with less out of district students coming in, it's going to reduce the amount of tuition revenue that we would put towards reducing member assessments. So as we take less out of district students, you're going to see member assessments increase. And we'll show you that in the slide because we reduced the amount of out of district tuition revenue in this year's revenue plan by $1 million. So we'll see that on the next slide, and that's how it ties into the budget. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Maria.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Maria Silva. I actually, like Ernie said, I've been at Assabet just under 6 months. I do come from Greater Lawrence, where I spent the first 20 years of my career. So I'm excited to be here and get familiar with all these cities and towns that I've never heard of because I've been up north my whole life. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Chapter 70 summary, but all this shows is what our Chapter 70 funding is for Assabet, which is just almost $7.5 million. And then the member assessments, which is broken down in the next slide, which we can go to the interest of Westborough. You guys do have 4 more students coming in. So your minimum local contribution is increasing by almost $100,000. And that's due to the 4 extra students that are coming into our district this year, well, for next year. We can go to the next one.
So a question,
Go ahead.
that's due also to the increase in the budget, not just from the 4 extra students, isn't it?
Nope, that increase is literally just the minimum local contribution. That's a formula set by the state, and it's based on the 4 students. Every city and town is different based on their ability to pay, their minimum medium income for the town, and other aspects is pretty complicated as far as the way the state does that formula. But each city and town is different based on their ability to pay. So as you can see, Berlin has 7 students increase, but their assessment is 94,000, almost 95,000. And Westborough has 4 students and theirs is almost 97,000. So that's set by the state. Like I said, it's a very complicated formula. But yeah, it's all in the ability to pay for the city or town. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but somehow the total number has to relate to the budget.
So that's just the minimum local contribution piece of it. We haven't really gotten into the budget overall itself. That's just the minimum local contribution that's set by the city, by the state for Westborough.
Okay, but they don't set that based on your budget. It's just a total number.
That's just a total number for the town's ability to pay.
Got it.
Okay. So Ernie alluded to this earlier. Last year, they had taken, or everybody had taken the opportunity to have their assessment reduced with the ESSER2 money. And then once it went through, we were not allowed to utilize that funding. So your overall assessment last year reduced by just about $8,700, $8,800. So that's taken into account in the increase for this fiscal year because it's adding to that. But I'll get to another piece of that later. But so your assessment is going up 87 more than originally from what you were assessed this year, and then again the 98,000 from the 4 increased students. So our revenue plan here, again, is almost $7.5 million, Chapter 70 funding. Out of district tuition, like Ernie stated, is just over $1 million less than what we utilized this fiscal year. So it's $3.5 million. Our E&D revenue, we're utilizing $300,000 from that money to offset the operational budget, along with our interest income and Medicaid reimbursement, along with our E-rate reimbursement. Our cherry sheets came out and stated that Assabet will be receiving $667,889 in transportation reimbursement, which offsets the cost to the member towns of our transportation. So the community's assessments overall is almost $14 million, and our budget overall is just under $26 million for FY23.
So I just wanted to reiterate, so that the admissions piece that I was talking about, you'll eventually see that 3.5 million reduced to very minimal over the next probably 3 to 4 years. So I just wanted to make sure I put the committee on notice that that will be going away.
So the way I am used to doing, the member assessments responsibility is a little different from what you're previously used to seeing, from what I've gathered over the last few months. So what you see at the top is the minimum local contribution, again, set by the state. Westborough's is $759,004. And then your above minimum contribution, which is the obligations towards towards net busing, that's offset by that regional transportation that we're receiving from the state, along with our OPEB trust fund that's funded $35,000 a year, and our long-term debt, which is what's considered the capital assessment. You see the net busing and the OPEB trust is based on the percentage of students coming to the district, which is 5.4. However, the long-term debt is set by a number that was set when the bond first was put into place, and that number won't change regardless of how many students the district is getting from your town, your member town. So your overall assessment for FY23 is $917,305. So our assessments for FY23 is 1.1 million is going towards the principal, $667,875 is going towards the interest, which is a reduction of $55,000. The other piece that isn't assessed to the member towns is our band that we're still carrying due to the renovation. So this year it's going to be $115,200 and $4,000 going towards the interest. Again, this is not assessed to the member towns as per agreement, I think back in 2015. So the assessment is on a per 3-year enrollment average at the time of the approval. And you'll see that on the next slide. So for the town of Westborough, your assessment is at 6.72%, which is higher than the current percentage of students coming to Assabet, but that was an agreement that was done previously, and we're not able to change. I learned that as I came into this district that was set this way. Typically, the way I've been used to doing it is based on the number of students that come to the town. So your assessment for next fiscal year is $125,000 towards the bond, which is a reduction of $3,696. This is the debt schedule. Again, as I mentioned, this was set early on, 2015 or so. That number, 6.72% for Westborough, will never change through the life of this bond, which takes us to 2042. So if the number of students increase and that number increases, this percentage won't change. If the number decreases, the percentage won't change either. So this is how, it's kind of like big picture, how the district is looking to utilize the funding for next year based on function code, which is the way I, have to report it at the department level, DESI level. And like Ernie stated, and I think I've stated along the way, is that I take into account your capital assessment as part of your assessment, and I've built them into this budget. So that's why you see such a big offset in function code 8,000, which is our long-term and short-term debt, along with our function code 5450, which is the interest on our ban. But that piece isn't assessed to the city or town. So that's our overall budget, which is almost $26 million. And that's what our school committee approved. The last slide is just our process and timeline of what we're looking to do in getting our budget approved throughout the city and towns.
Awesome. I guess we got enough people here, we probably should be raising hands, but if anybody from the Finance Committee has a question to start. I'll start because I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
One is the students that are post-grad, if they've graduated, are they still paid by public education dollars?
We do get some funding for those students. Again, coming new to this district, I've learned a lot in that process, but we do get funding for the vocational Chapter 74 portion of it. The students themselves pay a portion of their tuition. So we do get funding for those students from Chapter 70 funding.
So I guess my question was, it looked like the 4 were being counted in how many students from Westborough were attending, but if the 4 are postgraduate, or was I reading that wrong?
So Ernie, if you want to go back up to that slide, which shows the postgrads. So there are 4 postgrads students. However, that doesn't necessarily mean, and I can look further into it, that doesn't necessarily mean those are the 4 increased students. It's just we have 4 postgrads that are attending. It doesn't necessarily mean it could be 4 new freshmen, and I didn't look that deep into it, but it could be 4 new freshmen.
Yeah, because this is okay, got it. That's what just confused me, because it was the same number.
Yeah, no, that could be confusing, but
okay.
No, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it entails.
Okay, my other question, and maybe I have to ask Christy this too, but has this number been already given to our town? Because our number in our budget list is not the same number that they have there, by about $45,000.
Right, because we actually received $45,000 in excess and deficiency. So I don't know if Maria wants to speak to what that is, but
I will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
So that's the good news. I was given the bad news first. You got to go with the bad and then with the good. So what Christy's alluding to is this year, again, coming into the town, into the district, very new, and kind of familiarizing myself with their budget and everything that's happened over the years. Ernie, if I can share my screen, I will explain that piece. Let me see if I can share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened, and Ernie, I don't know if you want to kind of describe it more than I can because I kind of just came new into it, but basically we were above the 5% allowed in E&D. And so therefore we had to give this money back to the cities and towns. And the reason that happened was because there was some reporting that wasn't due in time. So we received our regional transportation reimbursement in August, but we needed to accrue it for FY21 because those funds were for FY21, and there was just like a lapse in, between my predecessor and myself coming in of this timing of what was happening with, district funds. So due to that factor, we have to return this money back to each city and town. And you can see we did it based on the percentage of students that are as of October 1st number. So that's where you see the 46,000. So what will happen with that is that I will still send out the assessments in 4 equal payments so that number is captured throughout the full year. However, in the first assessment or invoice, you will see a reduction of $46,564 to the overall assessment.
Okay, good. Anybody else have questions? I don't see any. If not, then thank you very much for the presentation and the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And just in closing, we again appreciate the support. And if there's any way that we can help with any community type projects, I have reached out to Christy and your head of the Board of Conservation. I think she's Conservation Commission, right? With that potential bridge project. If we can put our students' skill set to work, we'll be happy to help.
Yep, so they reached out to Sherry for that Bowman Street Bridge project. So that's something that we will partner with them on.
Nice. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, on to the next adventure. All right, just make sure nobody else is trying to get in. Good. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, I guess, talk about the senior needs assessment. There were some questions on how the costs were figured out and generated and stuff. And I see Alma is also on the line. But Christy, I'll turn the floor to you.
Yep, so Alma is on, as well as Shelby, who's working on this as one of the select board member goals, and then Patrick as the liaison to the Council on Aging. So I, following your meeting and your vote, I had requested to come back. It seems like there were maybe some misunderstandings based on the first time I came. I think the first one is the number is not just a rough estimate. As I had mentioned, we reached out to UMass Boston, their Gerontology Institute, and they do these all over the state. Weston's was $35,000. We had added some additional things that we thought would create additional costs. And so we actually do have a proposal from them for $45,000 based on some of the additional things that I had mentioned before, but happy to go back and talk about those again with some extra funding, a few $1,000s for any sort of ancillary needs related to doing this work in the community. So that might be refreshments at a focus group session or hard copies. Right now, the way the proposal is written, we would only receive electronic copies of the completed report. So to have hard copies available at the library or the senior center or other places like that. UMass Boston is a state organization, so there's no requirement for procurement. So this is not something where we would go out to bid. We have the proposal, and as soon as we have the funding, we can sign it and get started. So I just want to be really clear about that. In terms of sort of, I know that there were some comments made about the Weston report, and couldn't we just use that as a jumping off point in terms of identifying our own needs? In talking to the consultant, she agrees that there are sort of some core or key needs that are expressed sort of community to community. But, interestingly, though probably not surprisingly, the Western report, as an example, was done pre-pandemic. And so they're noting now that they're really seeing some different needs identified post-pandemic that they hadn't seen before, which I think as we think about that, that makes a lot of sense to us, that they're identifying some needs that maybe hadn't been brought to light before. Also, one of the things that I had mentioned before, but I want to be more clear about, is that when these needs are identified, even if they're the same or similar community to community, the sort of how we get programs together, what programs or departments or different things in our community can answer those needs is going to be different community to community, because we have different tools, we have different departments. People might use the senior center more in a different community, so that might be the right vehicle to provide a specific program. Maybe in Westborough that's different, or vice versa. Maybe the library has a different sort of style or approach or audience. And so I think it's really important that we're talking to our residents. When we did our strategic plan and we did our master plan, we asked our residents what they were looking for. And so when we're talking about how we're going to address senior needs going forward, we need to ask our residents, what their needs are and how we might address their needs. Some of the things that we talked to the consultant about that, maybe bump that cost up a little bit is we asked for 55 plus. Typically the reports that they do, the surveying they do is really 60 plus. We wanted to go down to that 55 plus. We hear a lot of things in the community about folks who might be interested in using the senior center, or maybe other things, and that, they want to make sure we're sort of gearing towards sort of those early seniors as well as other seniors. We also talked about having an increased number of focus groups and an increased number of key informant surveys. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we don't see this as a council on aging project. We see this as a community project. And so we want to make sure that as they're gathering their data, they're getting, they're talking to people, across the community who, might be able to offer different perspectives related to seniors or different seniors across the community. Let's see. One of the things that we think is really important, and UMass Boston actually has the ability to do this in-house, is translation services. So, we want to make sure that we are reaching out to seniors, in all demographics. And one of the things that we can do with that, so with translation of services, we would translate our survey. So there's a survey that goes out. It's online, so it's available to anyone to take online. But for the 55 plus part of our community, it's sent out in hard copy. And so when we send out the hard copy, it would go out in English. And then what some communities have done, and what I would see us doing, is that it would also go out to these households in another language that's highly used in Westborough. And so, there's a cost to that. There's certainly an additional postage fee, based on weight. There's copying, and then there's just the translation of it. So we think that's critically important. We want to make sure our outreach is diverse. And one of the things that our consultant mentioned is that some communities who have had the same need have actually decreased the number of questions in their survey in order to lighten the weight of the survey so that they can save on postage. That to me doesn't make any sense. I mean, we want a very comprehensive survey with, I think, the questions that we create, because it is a customizable survey, are going to be questions that we want everyone to answer. And so, that's why we had added some additional money there. Just going through some of my notes. I guess I would just say that, I think, we as a community have been talking about assessing the needs of seniors since I got here in 2010. It used to be something that was brought up on the capital plan as a need to really look at the physical space of the senior center and what the needs were there. It never elevated high enough to get on the plan. In 2018, we identified this as an initiative for our community. Obviously that was 4 years ago now. So, I think it's really time to talk to our seniors in the community about what their needs are. And especially as we look towards the creation of a community center, we want to understand, what that physical space should look like, making sure that it's, meeting the needs of all demographics in our community. So I guess I'm here to answer any additional questions. Shelby, Patrick, and Alma are also here for that. But I do think that it does seem like some of this information maybe was missing from your last discussion. So I hope this is helpful.
Okay, so let's start with Beth, who has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. I have a question. A couple of years ago, we paid for a system that was going to help us keep track of how things were being used. I guess a card system, I don't know whether it was some kind of identifier so that programs could be identified and you could keep track of attendance or whatever. Is that being utilized in this survey?
That's the My Senior Center software. And so that's specific to people who use the Senior Center for specific programs. I would expect that would be a data point, but I think it's important to understand that this assessment is not an assessment of how we use our senior center. It's an assessment of seniors' needs in the full community.
No, I understand that, but it just seems like it's part of the picture.
It's a data point. It certainly is a data point. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew?
Thank you. And Christy, thank you for the explanation. I think you touched on a lot of the thoughts we had. I think one of the elements that came through in the conversation, though, was the perception that a $50,000 survey was kind of a Cadillac survey. And indeed, I think you alluded to the fact that this survey has a lot of things that are extra built into it, expanding from 60 to 55, the extra touch points and stuff like that. I wonder if you could talk about how much you think this could be done in a year when Cadillac surveys might not be the most palatable. And if I'm wrong calling it a Cadillac survey, I would love for you to try and refute that as well if I'm mischaracterizing it.
Yeah, I do believe that you're mischaracterizing it. I mean, I would call it a comprehensive survey. I mean, it's not just a survey, but an assessment. It's an assessment that, is looking at the full scope of the needs of seniors in our community. And, I'm extremely sensitive to the increase in taxes. I hope that you have all seen that in my presentations, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about using free cash to do a survey to meet an initiative that this community in 2018 decided was a high priority, and something that I think our seniors have been asking for a very long time. So, it's a use of free cash. We've done other surveys or other sort of plans. We spent money on the staffing study. We've spent money on, the non-union staffing study, several years ago, we did one for a comp and wage study. We did it for a staffing study for fire. We did an assessment for their organization. We did, so we do these studies and we do them and then we've shown you that we use them and that's not different here. So I think it's important. And I think the timing is right. It's the proposed duration is 10 months, which would really focus a lot of that sort of work, in-person work happening, during the spring and summer, early fall, to hopefully avoid any, hopefully no other spike in COVID, but to hopefully avoid that if it happens.
Yeah, hope so too. Okay, Mike.
Okay, so as a member of the senior community, you can take what I say with or without a grain of salt. But I think there's a couple things. First of all, Christy, thank you very much I absolutely support this article. I think your explanation was excellent. It covered just about everything I was prepared to talk about. I would just like to make a comment, and the comment is this. As a committee, we are going to have to start thinking about the competing projects that are going to be looking at the senior community to participate in, whether it's senior center, intergenerational community center, or the library. Those are going to be very costly, to say the least. I think that we need to have at our fingertips the information relative to the senior community regarding their perception of their needs in this community. If we have 21,000 plus folks in this community and 13.5% are seniors above 65, we don't even know the number 55 and above. That's almost 3,000 people that we have to respond to. We are going to have to make some tough decisions down the road. And I think that, and we've been saying this for the last couple of years, if we don't have this information in a place where it is all available to us, and this survey or this assessment, I'm confident we'll do that based on the work I've seen them do, then we are just deluding ourselves that we're going to be able to make these decisions with all the information that we need. We are about, and that's the future and the not too distant future, but we have, since we started meeting on the budget and started voting on some of the articles, we have voted to fund things like stocking the Sandra Pond, the July 4th party, building a nice bridge in the woods for people who enjoy our trail system, but we're going to keep their feet dry by doing that. We're thinking about a replacement vehicle for $42,000 for the building committee, a greens mower. We're going to spend we may spend $16,000 on implementing the master plan. Not to mention that we've hired a consultant at $160,000 plus just to tell us how to spend our ARPA funds. I think this investment of $45,000 is a very worthwhile investment. And I'll conclude by saying I'm a marketing guy, and I think most of you know that. And any marketing guy worth their salt knows what their customers want, and they find out by asking them. And I think that's what we should be doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Zapper?
My question was answered in a way. My concern is this, surveys. What do we get out of it? Most of the surveys I've heard of, the participation is 30% or below. And that is to start with saying, we spend all this money, survey the people. And if 30% or below are responding to it, to me, that's not even getting to the point of what we're trying to achieve. When I voted last week, it was, I would love to spend the $55,000 on the seniors, not just doing the survey. There are other ways of finding out what the senior needs, not by paying somebody $55,000. The information given by Christy was very good. Just to me, private consultants versus somebody from UMass school makes a difference. That changed my opinion a little bit, but that's where I stand. Thank you.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, so it's not just a survey. They're going to prepare demographic profile information, look at trends in our community. Again, there's the survey, which again is it's a hard copy, but there's also the web portion, which we wouldn't be able to do in-house. That's what we've done the surveying with the strategic plan and the master plan. That's always been given to us by a consultant. And then, I guess I would say that I agree with you. I would love to say that we're going to spend $50,000 on seniors. But without this study where we're really reaching out to all the seniors and able to hear from them, we don't have a document that's telling us where that $50,000 should go. So, that's the purpose. The purpose is to get this document that really directs the needs and the wants of the community. And so in the future, I can come to you and say, we need $50,000, $100,000, $5,000, whatever it is for this based on what the seniors were telling us they needed.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my comment would be that if there seems to be a general tendency against consultants. However, employees are far more expensive, pardon to the employees that are here. But, consultants don't get OPEB, consultants don't get retirement, and it's a fixed cost for short-term need. And so all our solutions can't be that the staff should be able to do this. I think using consultants judiciously with expertise is a good idea. And I also think that as a FinCom, we would be very cynical, as sort of Christy just said. If you show up and say, I want to do this thing, we'd say, how do you know we want to do this thing? And so anyway, I'm in favor of getting this information for what I think is an area that's somewhat, area of information that's somewhat lacking. Shelby?
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks for allowing me to speak at your meeting. So just a couple points I think that are important to this proposed effort. I think the expansion to 55 plus is really important, because by the time we get to a lot of this implementation, whatever the needs assessment tells us or informs us of, these individuals will be 62, 65, et cetera, right? So we're going to catch more people. And I think that that's really important, so that the survey, in my opinion, remains relevant longer than people potentially that are going to age out of our community, or maybe age out of some of the needs, wants, and services that they might be responding to, a year from now. The other piece, and Mike, you touched on it, Walter sort of touched on that as well, is that I think without good data to inform our decisions, we will find ourselves, when we're making those difficult decisions down the road about whatever it is, whether it's a building or renovations or something, and we'll say, how do we know? And it's going to be very easy to cut or, reprioritize what we don't know and what we don't have data to support. So we as a community have valued fire and police assessments, a different kind, but we've done those. The library has done some of this work. So I think that it is, we owe it to those in our community, and we create an investment in those people that we're surveying. So, right, we'd say, where's everyone going? They're moving out of town. You invest in those individuals. Theoretically, they feel like their opinion and ideas are valued. Services are tailored and made to them, and they're here longer. So not that we want to deplete Amber's incoming students. They will always come. We want to make sure that we have a balanced Westborough. So thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, Mr. Welch, you're muted though.
Thanks, Walter. I appreciate the time to speak at your committee, and certainly an important topic. Just to add a little bit more to what Shelby was saying, I'll just mention, if the Weston study is any indication, I think there was a comment at the beginning about whether or not we could glean information out of that. If it is any indication, I believe somewhere down in the middle of that document, it talks about 14% of the senior community in Weston are people in need, and we're a larger community. And if that number is accurate or anywhere near accurate in relation to our town, 14% of probably the largest population in our town is a significant number of individuals in our town. And I would love to understand what that community of need needs. I've always been leery of studies. They're a cost, and they always result in additional cost to the town. But in this case, this is really important for us to understand. And I really appreciate Christy's comments that this has been a topic for her tenure in town, because I think, you know, having at one point in my long career worked at the Willows, actually, I have a passion for the senior community. Julia, my wife, worked there for 20 something years. So we're very connected to that community, and we want to understand what their current needs are. And, you know, certainly as the 55-year and older ones, and I'm almost there, will participate. This will set us up well for the future, hopefully, to support them. I was, again, a little leery under this budget constraints and conditions that we're in today to vote favorably for this, but it is a free cash spend. So it's money we've already appropriated. So it's no increase to the tax bill. So I felt that this, again, was money well spent, so that we can understand in the future, if we so decide to do other things based on this study, we'll have the data and knowledge to make those decisions appropriately. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to share one thing that Hank pulled together for us, which is actually the comparison. Hopefully that's what I'm sharing. But it's a comparison of Weston to Westborough, and there were quite a bit of differences here in the two towns as well. You can see that particularly in income and in growth, in recent growth particularly. Weston's been very stable. Hank, I see you want to speak.
Yep, Walter, when we look at that data, one thing we have to understand is that the Chauncey Lake development, that data is based on 2019, 2020 population in Westborough. The Chauncey Lake development by itself will add 1,000 people, as much as could be as much as 1,200, but in the neighborhood of 1,000 people to the over 55 population. So we're going to have that development by itself. No other is going to substantially increase that population. We really need to start preparing to do something for that population. It is a dramatically underserved population that is growing very rapidly, and we need to do something.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any more comments on this topic? Okay, let's see. So what else did I want to do next? Well, we have, I guess the next thing we wanted some input. Christy on, I sent out a notice about how we could recommend the ARPA articles, that we would recommend them as a borrow. Does anybody have questions beyond that on that philosophy? Okay. And I know Amber's on a bit of a time squish, so Mike, I'm going to ask you, you had questions on the playground. I understand you got your questions answered. Does anybody else have any questions on school articles, school budget, while Amber's here?
Could I make one comment before we have those questions?
Absolutely. Sure.
You know, when I reflected on my concerns of last week, I really want to make clear that there was no intent on my part to impugn anyone or any organization's integrity. And I can understand how some people might have taken it that way. And so I just want to be clear that the questions were purely about numbers and nothing more.
Okay, thank you. Paul, you're muted though.
I just had a quick question, as long as Christy's here, because there was a question about the Article 9A, the vehicle replacement, whether a hybrid was being considered for that. And I figured that, Christy, you probably have as good a insight on that as anything, as anybody. So I reached out, but then I knew that you were going to be here, so I thought I'd ask you. I reached out because somebody had that concern. That's not specified.
Yeah, it's not specific, but the intent is for it to be hybrid. I think, when the building commissioner came to the budget summit, he did speak to that as well. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to concur because I went back and looked at the minutes from this all-day summit, and it was clearly stated the intention was a hybrid. Like you said, it's not in the article.
right.
And in fact, it said in order to comply with our green community standards.
And I was only asking as the liaison, not as, I didn't have that concern. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, you have the experts. If not,
I don't want to hold you up because I didn't ask about this, so maybe a different meeting. But I would love to understand better your questions around the economic development articles, and maybe come back to another meeting to answer questions about those. Maybe with Fred and Sean.
I guess I'll defer to Mike on this. That would have to be Thursday. Oh, Mike, you're muted.
I've been having connectivity problems all night. Sorry. We're running on a tight schedule, Christy. But happy to have your input and Fred's input. Our meeting on Thursday is hybrid, so you're welcome to join. We need to get as you know, we need to get our votes complete so we can get the R&R published on the right schedule.
Okay.
So you're welcome to come back, but can we leave that as an open invitation right now? And if nobody has any other questions about those articles.
Okay, I guess I just would want to, now that you have the motions, I just want to make sure, I just want to call everyone's attention to it, that the money is coming out of the economic development revolving account. And so I know that Fred went over those amounts with you and what they were specifically paying for and where they came from. But the money is coming out of the economic development revolving account. We spend $40,000 a year from that account on grants to give to businesses. And then there's an additional money because we actually get $60,000 a year into that account. And so that's being proposed to be used for these other economic development needs. So maybe that's all I needed to say, but I might show up on Thursday too.
Paul? Oh, sorry, Beth was first.
Sorry about this. So I just want to, while Amber's here, find out what the clarifications that happened behind the scenes for you, Mike, that, because at the last meeting, I felt like you were putting a huge halt and were making me really uncomfortable that that there was information you needed from the school.
I got the information. Yeah. Beth, I got the information that I needed.
Can you share with us what were your key, can you unstick it for everybody? Because you stuck it.
Yeah, my concerns were that I was wondering if there were sufficient other funds in the non-levy funds to contribute more to this particular article. I had some concerns about why this article, if it was so important this year, had not been brought forward in the last 2 years, even during COVID, so that we could go on record with it. And when I had the conversation with Amber, my questions were resolved. And my bigger concern after those questions was that I knew that there were some folks who were offended, perhaps. I'm not going to say they misconstrued my comments, but I just wanted to make it clear, as I did to Amber, that I was not concerned about any integrity or any other motivations that were behind this article. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it, Beth.
Okay. Well, it was just, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Paul.
I just had a general thought, and it's a little visceral as opposed to logical, but to me, I feel there's a lot of, I don't know if it's peer pressure or pressure to vote yes for articles. And when we vote no, we get a lot of reselling. And the great arguments, and there are for a lot of things that were rejected along the way. I'm sure that through the winnowing of all the projects, because I know there were a lot more things that came up. So I don't know. I'm uncomfortable that if you vote no, you're going to get pounded into voting yes. So that's, as I said, it's visceral, because these are all been great arguments, and I really appreciate everybody's input. And I know it's frustrating if we're thinking things and that maybe misguided and all that. But anyhow, that's sort of just, as I'm getting off the committee soon, I just had that feeling that voting yes for everything. I don't know. It bothers me.
Appreciate that, Paul. I know that part of it was that some of the information wasn't available. So, and we often get into those modes where we don't know to ask the questions when the people are appearing in front of us, because we start thinking about it again, and we want to just make that opportunity. Okay, Christy?
I just to Paul's point, and not to change your opinion here, but I think, as someone who's brought different articles before you and then had the no vote and then sort of came back again, I think it's difficult. We come and we make our presentations, and for some of you, that's really the first time you're hearing a lot of that. And so I understand that there's not the same maybe discussion that you would have if you had more time to think about it. But as a town manager, and then what I hear from other department heads is, if we knew when you were going to be voting on these articles, some, maybe not everyone, but some of us would at least be present to make sure that if discussion came up where we could offer information, that maybe that would not necessarily sway your vote, but at least impact your vote. And so, that was sort of what I was thinking. And I think, Amber and I had a discussion. I'm sure that's why she's here too. We just want to make sure you have the right information, because it makes sense to me that if you're uncomfortable and you don't have all the answers to your questions, that you wouldn't vote to support something. So that's just a food for thought.
Yeah. Amber, you're muted though.
Thank you. So Paul, I really appreciate your comments a lot. And I think I echo what Christy said. I think for me, I really accept and acknowledge that your vote is your will. And I don't feel that you have to vote yes. What I do think is I like the presentation and the on-record discussions to provide clarity to voters. And I get anxious if I feel like the discussion creates confusion and we couldn't be here to answer those questions when we've made ourselves available and have in good faith worked to try to come forward and provide for you what you need so that you can decide your vote. I acknowledge and welcome, with a diverse committee and a full range of views, that a split vote is something, or a failed vote, or a unanimous vote, are all things that can happen. I just want to know that you've received the information that was presented and that it represents a clear article where the information was understood by everybody in their vote. So I wanted to come back, and I did have a long talk with Mike, and I was able to clarify, when you fail an article, two things he had said, like, why didn't we bring it back right away? I just want to clarify, and this is where he and I had a good conversation. When an article fails on town meeting floor, I believe there is a respectful culture of acknowledging that the article failed. It was the will of the vote. And whether I wouldn't have been there to request the funds if we didn't need it at the time we need it. And the playground has continued to degrade at quite a rate of concern. However, the will of the vote, it feels an arrogance to come back in the fall or the next year and ask again. You've seen that create feelings on town meeting floor, that they feel that after an article fails, you should be stepping away. So my general sense is that when an article fails, it's 2 years before it's cycled back. And as soon as we hit the 2 years, we rotated it back, where there's been enough time and opportunity to say, we heard you. However, we are here to say that this was a need at the time and it remains a need. So if I have an interpretation wrong on that, then we should, speak to that at some other time. I think it's an interesting cultural norm, as Paul was saying, kind of the right to vote, I think the other piece is that we always try to provide offset funding where we can. We brought in this article, it's 2 years later, we returned this article at the same cost estimate. We didn't add an increase. We've been fiscally responsible in acknowledging that the article as it was originally presented was $350 and we've returned it as such. And I do anticipate that I will use probably a portion of community ed funds to do, a new study or a new cost estimate if needed. And that, we'll need to see where we are. We might need to contribute some funds. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be more expensive than it was 2 years ago. Again, we took the responsible process to return. We would like this to pass. And, I appreciate the conversation on it. And I appreciated Mike calling me, and we had a very good conversation.
Thank you. Mike?
I just want to make one comment, not about that article in particular. We do sometimes find ourselves forming opinions about particular articles with insufficient information. And that's why we always leave the door open to revisit some of our votes. I have personally never felt the pressure to vote one way or another. And so, Paul, you and I have a divergence of opinion on this one. But we need to make sure, I believe, as a committee, that we have not just the right information, but enough information to make the affirmative obligation that we have a reality when we go to town meeting and say we recommend or we do not recommend, or we recommend you pass over. So if I have to, or anybody else wants to invite someone back to clarify information, I think that's important for us to do. And that's why I think we leave the door open on that. And I'm appreciative of the fact that a lot of people not on this committee took their time to be with us tonight to help us understand a little better the senior assessment, the other articles that we're wrestling with. And, I think that as a committee, we are always trying to do the right thing, period. Full stop.
Thanks, Mike. I think it's very important that as a committee, in our discussions, that we don't misstate. Opinions are fine, but we sometimes, if we misstate facts, it should be corrected, because people do listen to that. Anyway, any more on this? Otherwise, we can continue on voting. Amber, I know you have to go at some point, so you can drop out when you want.
I actually do. I appreciate it. I actually have an important family meeting that I need to join. We're planning my mom's memorial service. So my family's already Zooming without me, and I'd like to hop in, but this is equally important in other ways. So I remain available to any of you if you have any questions to follow up with me. I'm always happy to continue discussing any of our articles. And I thank all of you for the time you give. So I'll see you at town meeting if you don't email me before. But because I do have to hop off, I'm happy to interact with any of you along the way. All right.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, so I would propose that we get back to covering articles that we put off last time. And Mike might not quite have joined us, but there was a hesitation to do the reserve fund article until we saw better what we were going to use this year, which I believe we're going to be exploring more, not just for Article 6, but Article 5A.
Yeah. Hank and I have a meeting on the 15th with the DPW to see where they stand on their snow and ice budget at that point, which is just before the town meeting. So that's as far as that 85,000 is concerned. On the 250, I know that as a committee, there were some folks who believe that we ought to increase that. So if that requires further discussion, it requires further discussion.
Yeah. Okay. For the other one, or the next one, oh, sorry, Hank, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just to clarify, the article to replenish the FY22 reserve fund, the intention is to leave the article the way it is and make a recommendation on town meeting floor, including a motion when we have the data that we need from the DPW meeting that's going to occur next week. So I would suggest that at this point, we leave that for the purposes of our book. We leave that meeting, that item open. We don't vote it with the intention that we'll vote it on town meeting floor, make a recommendation and a motion.
Yeah, to be specific, that's Article 6.
Correct.
Okay. And so maybe we'll talk, and we'll have to decide whether we want to vote 5A next week or not, or wait till town meeting floor for that too. The next one that we had a question on, I think, was hazardous waste day. And I don't remember, Beth, if you were going to try and, there was some question about how much it was used the last time it happened, which I think now is several years ago. You're muted, but sorry.
So I talked with my husband and asked him to get in touch with Jen, but he is working this evening and he has not told me anything.
Okay.
Christy, you might know the answer. In the reports that Clearwater does, do we get feedback on how much actually gets recycled?
I can't answer that. Sorry.
Right.
I don't know.
And my husband just kind of was like, I don't know. It might be in the report. So no, I have no information yet.
Okay. So is that something we'd like to get some more information on?
Yeah,
Thursday?
I mean, I think, well, so I realized is that because of separation of whatever, I'm not the formal liaison. I can do it because I think the formal liaison hasn't been here. So I'll just call tomorrow morning and ask.
Okay. So let's revisit that Thursday.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's fine. We have a big one, the operating budget, but I think let's go through the other articles first. 9A, vehicle replacement building department. I think the concern was whether that was going to be hybrid or not, and it's intended to be. So is everybody ready to vote on that one now?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So I need a motion. Yeah, hold on. I got to get out the warrant. Yeah.
When you posted the warrant last time, it made it significantly easy. When you shared your screen with the warrants, it made it significantly easier to follow.
I'm working on that part.
Okay.
And I will point out it was easier for you. I'm not sure if it's easier for me.
Sorry.
So this is Article 9A.
Walter, I move the AFC recommended a town meeting that the town vote to transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $42,000 for the vehicle replacement for the building department.
Okay, do we have
Bradley,
a second? Bradley, okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's start with Beth.
Blumberg, yes.
Melanie's not here, just for the...
Bradley, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Goldman, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Dig, yes.
Already, yes.
All right, that's 8-0. Okay. Next one, we're up to Armstrong Playground, which is number 9M. And this is not ARPA, it's a free cash article.
I move to recommend the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $350,000 for the purpose of replacing the playground at Armstrong Elementary School.
We have a second.
Already second.
I'll let Mike do it since he caused so much
Thank
trouble.
you. Thank you so
That's
much,
right, you
Walter.
can take credit.
All right.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Okay, let's go to a vote. Is one of the potential
ARPA ones?
So this is a borrow.
Okay. I recommend, let's see, I move that we recommend the town vote to borrow the sum of $1,500,000 for the purpose of the high school rooftop chillers.
Okay.
Bradley, second.
Okay, Bradley. Any further discussion on this?
Blumberg, yes.
There you go.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Dig, yes.
Already, yes.
Also 8-0. The next one is similar but far more complicated. The Hastings HVAC.
Okay.
This one you might.
I will read it carefully to get all the dollars in there. Okay. I move that the AFC recommend the town vote to appropriate the sum of $1,835,327. But there's more money.
Yeah, Beth, I don't think we want to appropriate. I think we want to borrow.
Oh, this is the ARPA
Well,
one?
there's only some of it that's a borrow, right? Because some of
it's some of it's a borrow and some of a transfer from other borrows.
Well, the total amount amount's being appropriated. It's not a raise and appropriate. So that's what you were reading, Beth.
Yeah,
but
I didn't use the word
that's
raise.
total amount.
Okay, let me just kind of continue and then we can make adjustments as we need to.
Sure.
And to see if the town will vote to reallocate from surplus funds from the Armstrong Modular Project, Article 20 of 2018 Annual Town Meeting, the amount of $145,924 as the project is complete and for which no liability remains, to reallocate surplus funds from the Hastings Schools Pre-K article to authorize construction of the Pre-K School Edition, Article 5 of the 2017 special meeting in the amount of $360,145, which project is complete and for which no liability remains, and borrow from available funds the amount of, sorry, it crosses the line, $1,329,258.
That's it.
Am I done? For the purpose of the Hastings School HVAC system.
Yeah, I don't think we're borrowing from available funds. I think we're borrowing.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have to amend
accept as
that.
a friendly amendment to delete the word.
I amend that to delete the word borrow, please.
Yes.
Wait, do you want to delete borrow or do you want to delete transfer?
Delete from available
Transfer.
funds is what we have to. From available funds is what we have to delete.
So that's fine. Your last number was for borrow only. It's not
Yeah.
or.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, can I have a second for the amended motion?
Bradley, second.
Thank you, Andrew. Any further discussion on Hastings School HVAC? I think we wore everybody out. That's good. Okay, let's start
Ready?
with that.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Siddiq, yes.
Moretti, yes.
All right, that's 8-0. We now go to Article 14, which is water system chlorine or some such thing.
Okay. I
And this,
move the AFC recommend the town vote to raise sorry, this one's not ARPA. Okay, is this a borrow?
Borrow.
Okay, I recommend the AFC recommend the town borrow the sum of $810,000 for the purpose of the town water system improvements.
okay.
Bradley, second.
Okay. Bradley. Very good. Any further discussion?
Yeah, how come this wouldn't be coming out of the water revolving account that we have?
So the borrow gets borrowed, but it gets paid back by the water.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, we skipped over 11, understandably, but I would like to recommend to the committee, and I'll make a motion if you all want me to, that we reconsider Article 11 on Thursday evening when all of our members are present.
Yeah, can we go back to that after we finish 14? Because we have a motion on the floor.
I thought we just finished 14.
No, we
didn't
haven't
vote
voted
yet.
it.
Well,
I
oh,
read
for
the
God's
article.
sake.
We didn't vote.
You know what? I got to stop drinking. I got to stop drinking before these meetings. I'm sorry.
So yeah, we could even talk about 11 later. I was just sort of going through the ones we hadn't even hit it all yet.
All right. Was that the discussion for this one?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I thought this would only be a technical thing, but since this was voted 900 before and then we never unvoted it,
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I feel like
so,
voting
yeah,
at 800 would not be right. We had 9 before.
Yeah, so I agree. So what happened was we had voted this as a borrow, which was appropriate. And then we freaked out when we hit the ARPA and we decided to revisit them all in case we had to. So actually we can just go with our last vote.
So I withdraw my secondary motion.
Yay. And we'll stick with the original vote when we had 9. You're correct, Paul. And we even had done that as a borrow. That's good.
Should we?
Are we going back to 11?
Okay. Mike, is your motion you prefer to do it Thursday or tonight?
Well, have we voted 11?
We previously voted 11.
As a borrow?
No. Sorry. 11 is the senior needs assessment.
Oh.
That was just a revisit for more discussion.
My recommendation is that given the new information we received this evening, that we reconsider that vote, but we do it on Thursday when hopefully all of our members will be present.
All right.
Okay. Fine. So we go on now to number 15 then. Town water. Now this one we did not vote last time because the ARPA, we want to do this as a borrow.
Okay. I move that the AFC recommend the town vote to transfer from retained earnings.
No, borrow.
But we don't borrow from retained earnings.
We do. Well,
No.
This is not a retained earnings. This is a borrow, and then you pay it back from retained earnings.
Well, no.
The article, Beth, is written that you could raise an appropriate borrow or transfer. And what we just want to make the motion is
Wait, 6. Okay, the motion may be written that way. the article is written vote to transfer.
No, it says raise and appropriate, borrow or transfer.
Wait, are we doing 15 or 16?
15.
Thank you. I was doing 16.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's almost like he should be showing it on the screen so it's easier.
He is, and it was. They were both on the screen. Okay.
He was being cynical.
I recommend the town. No. Okay. I recommend the town vote to borrow the sum of $1,482,000 for the purpose of the town water infrastructure improvements.
Second.
Bradley, second.
Hank already did. Okay. Any further discussion?
I think this is necessary.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Okay. Beth?
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Siddiqui, yes.
Moretti, yes.
Okay, it's 8-0. Okay, now we'll get down to 16.
Walter, can I just clarify a comment that was made? So the water enterprise fund, I think is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
When you incur debt, it's actually paid through the budget of that account. Retained earnings is like free cash, but for these enterprise accounts.
Right. But it's paid for by the enterprise account.
Enterprise.
Right. Not
Okay,
retained earnings.
perfect.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
But that's why it's not borrowed from the enterprise. There's a borrow that's paid back by the enterprise fund.
Right.
That's perfect. Okay. So now this time, this is a transfer from water retained earnings.
I move the finance committee recommend the town vote to transfer from water retained earnings the sum of $250,000 for town water main design and construction.
Bradley, second.
Okay, Bradley, second. Any further discussion on this one?
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Siddiqui, yes.
Moretti, yes.
All right, we're recommending that 8-0. Okay. The next one I have is Article 23, Community Preservation Act. Can't fit the whole thing on the screen.
Well, you could
But
transfer.
there is no
Okay.
money on this, so it would be just to recommend.
I recommend the town so vote. No, there isn't money attached to the. Yeah, I guess not.
It will cost money, but there is no
money
dollar
attached.
fund that you're paying. You don't pay for the bill.
Should we include the 0.5% maybe?
Well,
You can't and you don't need to.
and what we're really doing is you're voting to put it on the ballot in reality.
Yeah. I think that's why I recommend the town so vote.
Okay. So Blumberg, and I heard Bradley second. All right, discussion.
I was one of the earlier. I had earlier concerns about this bill, but the fact that money wouldn't come out until 2024 is why I'm sort of pivoting around to saying, yeah, I think it's a better time to put it on right now to give us that year to run up for this.
Mike?
I never got a clear answer to the question of if this is such a good deal that's been in existence for over the last 20 years, why haven't 137 towns jumped all over it? And that gives me some pause for concern. I always have grown up understanding there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I worry also about the perception that we're creating to even add this, though it's not going to become due until 2024, to the tax burden that all of our homeowners have, all of our residents have, even those in apartment buildings and multifamily dwellings. It just doesn't look right this time. It doesn't feel right this time, but that's me, and I don't plan on supporting it.
Beth, I think.
Oh, okay. So I saw Paul up there, but so my concern for this one is not in the concept, but in the practicalities of, I know that people in other towns, possibly people who didn't vote, possibly people who didn't do the equivalent of go to town meeting in their towns, were up in arms when they got their first bill, because it came as a surprise to those people who aren't sort of following town politics. And I think we really strongly need to make sure, if we pass this, that people, that before we pass this, that people really understand this is above and beyond their already current tax bill. Even though it might be good in terms of what it brings in, it's still a surcharge.
You have some suggestions on how we do that beyond what we've already done? We're going to the voters, we're going to the polls. We're going to go to a town election, a town-wide election where anybody who's alive and well and is a registered voter gets a vote. None are so deaf as those who will not hear.
Paul?
Two things. I think one of the reasons people maybe hadn't voted on it, other than just the same reasons we haven't, which I see none good, was that it's restricted funds, and you're putting aside funds. Everyone likes funds to be not restricted, but available for wherever they're needed. And then I also think that the issue of it not coming until 2024 is important, in that it's not, we always hear this term kicking the can down the road. It's not that, because other things that are theoretically other things that would be in the budget that year, or as a capital item or whatever, will be paid by this, at least over time. So I think it may reduce the tax rate accordingly. That's kind of pie in the sky, but theoretically, that's a reason that it not being till 2024 makes it a lot more sense. And it's it's the quickest it could be anyhow. But if it were 2023, that would not be the case. So anyhow, to turn down a free cash match, and as we have been for 20 years, it makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Shelby, you have something?
Well, I was on the preservation committee, so first of all, I'm here to answer any questions, only because I happen to be on the call. If there are any, Mike, just to respond to yours, I don't know why other committees haven't adopted it. It's a fair question. I think based on my experience here, it's an effort by any committee, and people have to have a will to do that. And obviously Westborough did, like the other communities that have tried and adopted it, but it's a great question. Certainly I understand the context. The other point, Beth, that you made about making sure people understand this, just as a reminder, this vote comes before town meeting, and then it's going to go on a ballot. So there's a whole other effort that has to go on for the general election, where there will be individuals obviously supporting it, maybe those against it, if it were to make it that far, that will be continuing that education campaign. So I just wanted to wait.
Okay.
Tom?
Kind of piggybacking off of Shelby's comments there, where the fact that we're going to have this on the ballot after town meeting, I think we owe it to the voters to give them a chance to at least voice their opinions on it. So personally, I fully support the article itself, regardless of whether when it comes time to cast our vote at the ballot, it's one thing, but I think we should at least get it on there.
Yeah.
Hank?
Yes, this happens to be a very cost-effective way for the community to support affordable housing, open space, and historical preservation. If you don't want to support historical preservation, open space, and affordable housing, vote against it. If you believe the community should support those things, it's a very cost-effective way. You get 40% leverage of state money. It's a very cost-effective way to do that.
Well, Hank, I'd like to respond to that. I do support open space. I do support affordable housing, and I do support the things that this is aimed at. We just voted last week to move $1.2 million to affordable housing for a potentially new senior housing facility. We have been paying for open space. Yes, the Open Space Committee is out of funds right now, but that doesn't mean we can't allocate more funds to it. We have been paying for these things, and it seems to me we're going to pay again. We're just, how much, at what point do we say, how much do we really need? That's all my concerns. Plus, you know what? If this had come up next year, I would have said, well, maybe it's okay. But I just don't like the way this looks right now. But you know what? It's going to go on the ballot. It is going to, hopefully we will have a large turnout for the election, and we'll see what happens. But please don't say that if we don't vote for it, we don't support those things. When Jennifer was here for our meeting last week, I would have hoped she would have come with some explanation of why other towns didn't support it, even if it was anecdotal information. And there was
Mike, a lot of towns do a lot of things. So
yeah,
I looked at it very differently in that when I first saw a presentation on this, I was actually amazed that not a single town has retracted it. And that's what told me it has a lot of value, because out of, I forget, it was 180 something towns who adopted this, not a single one has voted to remove it. So how bad could it be? Because I think it has a lot of potential, and it doesn't surprise me that a lot of towns didn't do it. Westborough didn't do it for 20 years because we tried to do it early, probably the wrong way or something. I don't know completely the history, but to me, this has it's like the state has decided to fund these areas in a very bizarre and strange way, in my opinion. And that's collecting funds when you register your house, and then we're going to divvy it out. Probably because they're afraid ever to raise taxes on a more general basis or use something. But this is how they came up with it. And so the way you can get state funds for these three areas is this method. Now, that said, I think we should be looking in the future, and that's why I like that it's a year out, that if we're going to have these funds to do this, then we don't have to use other funds to do this. This should become part of our chest of money that we have, and not just an extra whole amount. And that takes a little more discipline, and I think that's probably part of the concern of some people. But given the way this works, it just seems like it makes an incredible amount of sense, and that I'm very much in favor of moving to the next step, put it on the ballot, and see how well we can explain it to people. Is anybody, Zaffer, you didn't comment? I don't know if you have one. Anybody else?
Ready for the vote?
I'm ready we did a motion, right? Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Okay, you're gonna have to excuse me because I'm doing too many things here, but Beth, you moved it, and who seconded it? I didn't write that down.
I thought it was Andrew.
I think Andrew in a surprise second.
Okay, thank you.
Blumberg,
okay,
yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Paul? Muted.
Sorry, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Tadig, yes.
Already no.
Okay, so we have 7-1-0.
What article was that? I lost track. I'm trying to find it.
Article 23.
23, thank you.
I have a bigger font on mine. My temptation on the citizens petitions are to wait. John's working on getting us actual wording on the
Motions.
motions, unless people feel differently today. I think that's particularly maybe the indigenous people one we're ready to go. I don't know, but
Walter, when is he? Are you trying to wrap up the booklet Thursday, or are you wrapping it up next Monday?
We are going to
Thursday.
We're going to try to get the information to the selectmen's, the board of select board's office on Friday.
Okay. I may not have everything done, but you can always just say you'll make a recommendation at town meeting. I'm working on it. And actually, Christy, while you're here, I sent email. Could you ping town council and see if they have a preferred way to word one of these non-binding motions, like Article 35, so I get it in a way they think conveys what we're trying to convey?
Yep, I got it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'll try to get you what I can by Thursday. And worst case, you guys can make a recommendation to town meeting floor. But I've been working on those the past couple nights. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So then next, I would like to do, since I think that covers all the articles. Maybe Paul can back me up on that. But I would like to go to the budgets. So I'm going to share my screen again. And Leah was nice enough to send me this today. You can see all the 0s, 0s, 0s because we haven't voted yet. So we can do this John Arnold style, where we go through all of them, and if there are any questions, pull them out and then vote them a group, or do we have to vote them individually?
Before you start, can I just ask, are the selectmen choosing to defer payment for next year? Is that why the AFC recommended is 0? Is that something that AFC is taking on their behalf, or have the selectmen agreed to?
We might have an opinion on that, but we didn't come up with that.
Okay.
The select board voted to reduce it to 0, so that's how we presented it.
If that's the case, go ahead and reduce mine to 0. We've been doing that for a couple of years in COVID, and I didn't know what was going on. So you can reduce mine to 0 as well. Save the town $250. Since I don't take it anyway, might as well not get it for free cash. So, all right, thanks.
Walter, I recommend we use the John Arnold method and just step through, and if anybody has questions, they can ask them.
Okay, that sounds great. Let me just pull up my copy of this sheet so that I can mark any that are changed.
Just for your record, I will say that I am in concurrence with essentially I'll request that you recommend $0 for the town moderator salary and wages again. Okay.
So I'm going to start. And if anybody wants to question, if there's any questions, call them out. But town moderator salary and wages.
There's a question on town moderator. We have to have a question on town moderator to change the number.
Okay, perfect. Expenses 0. Okay. I would think this would be called select board these days / town manager. Salaries and wages elected is nothing. Oh yes, we just talked about that. Salary and wages, $543,089.
Which is the staff.
Yeah, I mean, Walter, all we need to do is go through the department by department. And then if nobody has questions, we vote the numbers as printed. If the people have questions, we go over them.
Okay, sounds good. Board of Selectmen, any questions? All right. Finance Committee, any questions? Is that salary for our non-existent admin?
Correct.
It is, Walter, but you, Walter,
Yeah,
you could petition because you've been doing the minutes.
it's okay.
There
I don't
is a
need the money.
provision.
I don't need the money. The town needs the money more than me right now, I think. Finance Department, any questions? Assuming you can all see this. Legal. Information Technology and Communications. Central Purchasing. I just have a question for Christy. What is central purchasing?
So it's actually managed by my office, but it's things that we purchase. It's like office supplies we purchase centrally for different departments.
Oh, so this is expenses, not people. Okay, that makes more sense.
Right.
I didn't know of a person that was in that job, but there isn't. These are just like
Correct.
pencils and paper or whatever.
Ink
Got it.
and yeah.
Toner cartridges. Town clerk. So, okay. Elections and registration. Planning Department.
Sorry, I'd like to call it elections.
Yeah, sorry, I talked and I was muted. I mean, yeah, I was going to say that seems like a huge % increase.
Okay. We'll come back to that. Very good. Planning Department. Board of Appeals. Insurance. Police Department. Sorry, didn't mean to move it. Fire Department and Ambulance. The exciting Community Development Department, which now is Building Inspection, Conservation, and EDC. Which
doing the John Arnold method, do we vote one page at a time or the whole document and then
Whole
just
document.
back to this?
We do the
going all the
whole
way.
document.
Okay, thank you.
Weights and measures.
Does that mean we no longer, oh no, it's just no change, okay.
Animal control. Elizabeth Valley, we should be fully experts at by now. And I would have had a question, but it was answered. DPW, including DPW, Town Building and Grounds. DPW Snow and Ice. Electricity. Landfill. Health Department. Council on Aging. The Youth Commission. Veteran Services. Trustees of Soldiers Memorial. The Library. Recreation. Cultural Council. Historical Commission. Debt. Okay. Country Club Enterprise. Sewer Enterprise. Wastewater Treatment Plant. Water Enterprise. Okay, we have one question item from the general government total. We'll go back to. And then we have this school department. Questions? Okay, so I guess we would like a motion for everything but election and registration.
And town moderator.
And town moderator, sorry, two of them.
So I move we approve the budget as printed in the warrant with the exception of town moderator and elections.
It's not actually printed in the warrant. It's as appears in these documents.
As appears in these documents. Thank you.
As presented, yeah.
As presented.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and find the article, which is Article 4. Bloomberg and okay, Roush. Okay, any further discussion? If not, let's vote those.
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Siddiqui, yes.
Peretti. Mike? Did we lose Mike?
Yeah, he's muted.
Yes.
Okay, there you are. All right, that's 8-0. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the two that we didn't, that we had questions on. The first one.
I think we just need a motion to change.
I move the Finance Committee recommend the town moderator's salary and wages budget line item be reduced to 0. Just as a comment, we're going to pay what he's worth.
Bradley, second.
Oh, that was nasty.
I
do not second that comment.
Yeah,
I second everything except the comment.
All right. So the motion is seconded, but not the comment. Okay, any discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, let's vote.
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Siddiqui, yes.
Already, yes.
Is also 8-0. Okay.
And I just have a question on the elections. I think I know the answer. Is this just because we now have this early voting that's just using a lot more manpower?
I'm assuming that Christy, I don't know if you have, I don't have all of Wendy's comments. I just pulled up the budget document. The reason for the increase is that last year, the budget for wages clerical for the elections was $5,000, but the year before it had been $43,000. And since only $36,000 were spent in FY 2021, this year, it looks like the town clerk's asking the budget to go to 37,000 up from 5, but in 2021 it was budgeted 43. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm thinking that a bunch of stuff that normally happens, like election workers, maybe there weren't because of COVID, there just wasn't as much need. But if Christy doesn't have the answer, I'd suggest somebody call the town clerk tomorrow and just get an explanation. But it looks like it was a 1-year blip of budget from 43 down to 5, and now it's asked to go back to 37.
Well, I was also wondering if it's
Can I just answer?
Thanks, Christy. Thank you.
So this budget fluctuates depending on the number of elections in a particular year. So the reason it was only 5,000 last year is because there was only the local election.
Oh, right. No presidential or primary. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So
Thank you. I knew it was something.
that it has to do with the number of election workers that need to be paid, and obviously additional elections.
Thank you, Christy.
So like this year, we have our own election now, but we have another one in November, right? So
Yeah, there's
Right.
there's a
So
state
this
primary and there's a congressional election in
Right. So this,
primary.
so in this current fiscal year, which is the one for the, with the 5,000, we only have this, the election, the local election that's on Tuesday. But in November, that's fiscal 23. So that's why it's higher. Plus we'll have the local election in fiscal 23.
Yeah. And a state primary in September, I believe.
So is everybody satisfied? Their questions are answered. I'll take a motion.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Paul, go ahead.
So would that same reasoning apply to both salaries and expenses? And is there any role, and especially in expenses, for the adding of a precinct in that going up? And on the other hand, what is the voting devices? Is that included in those expenses?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Christy, sorry.
You're muted, Christy.
There is a line item for the
If you're
handsets,
looking at
even though we
page
haven't used.
106 of your budget books, we still budget the $20,000 for the handsets for fiscal 23. And then there is, let's see, a slight increase in IT and maintenance services. I think partially related to the increase in voting machines, but in terms of upstarting that precinct, I think this committee already funded that through a reserve fund transfer.
Right. So it's not an
we had $30,000 out of reserve or so for the actual machines needed for.
Right. And then there's some additional printing and copying in fiscal 23, which is related to
okay. And since we're voting on this line, I guess I'd like to express my opinion that $20,000 is better spent somewhere else than on, because I think it's worked very well with the old fashioned system. I know we've had lower numbers, but I don't know. Food for thought, but it's not going to change my vote, I guess.
No, Wendy and I are in discussions to see if there's a way to make electronic voting happen, but make it happen cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll still budget it, but maybe it won't have to be that much spent.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think a lot of it has to do with security now.
So just one question on that. So the actual the expense of the town meeting clickers is in the election and registration budget. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, the handsets.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks.
I move the Finance Committee recommend the election and registrations budget be set at the value set in the document presented here.
Second.
Bloomberg second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Hagel, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Dig, yes.
Already, yes.
Is also 8-0. So I think we're done with the budget. Go back to my agenda. We talked about the vehicle, the budget, the CPA, hazardous waste day we're putting off again. We talked about 9M and 10, 14, 15, 16, 14 we didn't revote, and we're going to talk about 11 next meeting. So I think that's it. For that, we have minutes to cover. I need a motion that we accept the minutes of meeting number 27 of March 3rd, 2022.
Already second.
Who did
Thank
the
you,
first?
Christy.
Thanks, Christy.
Thanks, Christy, for coming. Who made the motion?
Nobody.
Nobody. Hank, Mike.
I thought you
seconded
did,
something.
Walter.
No, I said I need a motion.
Oh, for God's sakes.
All right, I'll move it. Except for I wrote them, so I feel weird. And I'm chairing, so.
I'll second. Already second.
Okay.
Oh, Bloom. Sorry.
Hey, I'll move it.
Okay.
It is seconded.
Yes.
And you can vote.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Vicky, yes.
Moretti, yes.
It's also 8-0. Okay, are there any liaison reports?
Can I just point out that we took 2 hours to approve 1 minute and 2 seconds?
We did who?
It's taken us 2 hours to approve one set of minutes for which we had 2 seconds. No committee reports from Andrew.
Very good.
No report.
Okay, future draft agendas Thursday. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the R&R draft?
The R&R draft will be completed and out to you all by Wednesday afternoon. And I'd like you to give me your feedback on that, either individually by email or on Thursday at the meeting. While we're trying to get everything done by Friday, if there are major revisions, then we'll get it done by Monday, which is basically our drop dead date. But I'd like to stay focused on getting everything wrapped up by Thursday evening. Thursday also, by the way, is a hybrid meeting.
It's hybrid, and so from my mind, the other things we still have to examine are hazardous waste day, potentially 5A, the reserve, the 4 citizen articles. I think that might be about it. There are 4 citizen petitions.
2 plastics, 1 indigenous peoples, and 1 about allowing elected officials time to count. I'm still tracking that one down. I have not gotten official word that the person wants to pass over that. I'm still trying to get in touch with him.
Okay, I thought that was resolved. Sorry.
Well, I know that's what was discussed. I haven't gotten confirmation out. I'm trying to do that.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's it then. I believe we could do a motion to adjourn at 9.
Oh, so moved.
Are we adjourning? Second.
Blumberg. Any discussion? Hearing none, vote.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Eagle, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Roush, yes.
Vicky, yes.
Moretti, yes. Good night, all.
8-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Long meeting. Good job.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Walter.
Westborough TV. Thank you, Aiden.
And
Walter,
Walter,
thank
Mike,
you.
if
That was
it's
great.
unclear,